Okay.
All right, welcome colleagues. My name is Mary Von Joko, and I am presenting a capstone presentation. I am in a teacher lead master's program, and for my capstone presentation, I had to do a action study research. And I did my action study research on what my emphasis is, which is gifted education. So, because our school is a Title I school, because it used to be a priority school, I wanted to know how teachers felt about identifying gifted students in our school. I wanted to do that because, as we know, we're no longer a priority school, but we still have a lot to do as far as bringing up our achievement. So, if we're able to identify gifted students at our school and effectively identify them, then we would be able to help increase our scores, because we're giving those students the education that they need, and that's going to help them. And it's also going to help us, because that's just going to help our achievement. So I started by, first I had to receive approval from the International, what's it called? I don't know. The International Research Board, IRB. So I proposed my research, which is teachers' perception about identifying giftedness in underrepresented populations. So underrepresented populations include students that would fit into categories that is usually not really represented in gifted programs. So that includes minority students, students that are low socioeconomic status students, students that are English language learners, and also students that would be considered twice exceptional, meaning that they're gifted, but they're also receiving ECE services. So when we look at our population of students, almost every student that we have fits into fits into those groups, and they would be underrepresented in gifted programs. So I wanted to know, how do teachers, how would they identify gifted students, and what are some of the things they would look for? So I started off by getting my participants. The participants for this study, I wanted to make sure that each of our grade level was represented, and I also got participants that were special area teachers, and also that dealt with English language learners. The only area that I didn't get, and if I had to go over again, I would get an ECE teacher to be a part of the study. The way that I collected my data was I had 2 gifted surveys that I gave. I also presented an online gifted PD. I presented that to the participants, and I wanted to get the data back from there. Also, I did an interview. So each of my participants, I interviewed them. I asked them questions specifically related to identifying gifted students. I wanted to know what they thought were the characteristics of a gifted student, and what indicators they thought best identified gifted students. And so I'm going to share with you the results from that study. One thing that I thought was interesting, that a lot of the teachers that I interviewed, they said that one of the most important factors of identifying gifted students in our population was student-teacher relationship. They thought that if you're a teacher and you're able to create a bond and a relationship with a student, that you're able to see that that giftedness qualities better. So I was kind of surprised by that, because I know we talked about creating student-teacher relationship when we're talking about, you know, kids' trauma and building that classroom environment. But it just kind of, I didn't really put the connection when identifying gifted students. So I was pretty surprised by that result. The result that did not surprise me was that a lot of the interviewers, they thought that standardized testing should not be the be-all, end-all of identifying gifted students. And this was especially true with our population, because we know our kids. Some of our kids may not test well. They can do the work, they can show giftedness, but it just doesn't come across in a test. So what we should do with these results and how it relates to our school. So implications for future practices that we can put in place at our school. One of the things that we can do to help effectively identify gifted students is come up with a school-specific gifted checklist. When I was interviewing teachers, a lot of them, I asked them specifically, well, do you think a checklist, if you had one, that had the qualities of a gifted student that you would find in underrepresented groups, would that help? And almost everyone said yes, that would. So coming up with a school specific, because we have to think about our school needs, and how students would demonstrate giftedness at our school. It may not be the same in another school. So we would have to come up with a checklist that would be beneficial to our school. The next thing is gifted identification, professional development. A lot of the teachers said that we need more professional development so that teachers can be trained to effectively identify gifted students. And again, this professional development would have to be specifically related to our population. We want to be able to identify gifted students that we're going to come across for. So if we are going to do this, I would say that it has to be very specific to our type of population. And then the next step that we can do is incorporate positive student-teacher relationship strategies. We're already doing this. At the beginning of the school year, we talk about how important it is to build that positive student-teacher relationship. We would further that by specifically relating that to gifted students, and how we can effectively identify gifted students by having that relationship. Before I did the study, I did find some literature, some peer-reviewed literature that's already linked, and so here's my findings here. And with that, is there any questions anybody might have?
What kind of information would you put in the checklist?
Information that would go in the checklist. When we're looking at the indicators, from the interviews that I got, a lot of the indicators that teachers said, and I'm gonna move over here because I did list them. Some of the gifted characteristics was they felt that students should be self-motivated. Creativity was a huge part of the indicator. Learning new things quickly. Students were able to be problem solvers and critical thinkers. Look at the giftedness that we would find in music and art. As teachers, if you don't really know what to look for in a musically gifted student or an art gifted student, maybe has some indicators there that you would look for. One thing that I heard a lot was a gifted student is someone that's able to think out of the box. So if you were to have a problem and you had students that came up with a really okay, this is a very unique way of solving it, that would be an indicator that could potentially mean that that student is gifted. So I did have a list of certain indicators that came out of the actual study.
Is it something that you would tell, if you did do this, start doing this, would you tell the parents and talk to the students about what you found, or would you build on that first?
Absolutely. Would I share this information with our parents? I think it is, to make sure, because we have to have a partnership with our parents as well. So would I present it specifically this way? Maybe not so much, but I definitely would talk about gifted characteristics that they should look for in their students. One of the things that I did in an earlier class, because I'm getting endorsement in gifted education, and I did create an actual parent flyer that I would give. So if there were students that we thought were gifted and we wanted to get some parental input, I definitely would send out that flyer so that they would know what they should look for and just what that process would be. Because if we did identify a student and we wanted to recommend them for gifted education, there's a whole process that they would have to go through. They would have to get tested. They would have to get teacher recommendation, and there's a part that the parents would have to play too. So definitely I would love to present this to parents as well.
I have another question.
Yes.
I don't think our school right now has a gifted program, so would this information help for us to get a gifted program again?
Yes, absolutely. That's one thing. I'm getting a gifted education endorsement, so that would qualify me to actually give those gifted student services.
Oh, okay.
So this is something that could actually be in the future implications as well. For our school is to reignite that program. It kind of fell by the wayside when we started to focus more on, bringing up, novice reduction became a thing of us. But we all seen and we all know that we do have gifted students in our school, and they need to get those services because we need to give a quality education to them at any level. So even our gifted students should be receiving that education as well.
When you're talking about creating the checklist, just are they like if we were to do this, would it be like a teacher panel, like each grade represented to come up with these indicators for our specific school?
Yes.
So it'd be like, administrator/teacher panel to come up with this?
Since this would be a checklist that our teachers would use, it would be teacher driven.
Okay.
We would use the data that we have. We would look at there's other research that's out there that we would need to look for when we're trying to identify gifted students that would normally not fall in that traditional gifted education category. But what I would do is I would have another PD open for all teachers, and we would build it. It would be a productive PD where we actually would build the checklist based on the data and the research that we have about what's going to be the most effective way to identify gifted students. Any other questions? All right, well, I thank you for your time.
Yay!